Have you ever wondered why we call it Good Friday? The day Jesus died on a cross, brutally executed, abandoned by his followers, mocked by crowds who had praised him just days before. What could possibly be good about that? There is a shocking truth hidden within this day that most people miss, a divine mystery unfolding in plain sight that changes everything about how we understand God's plan. I am about to reveal 5 shocking mysteries about Good Friday that will transform how you see this sacred day forever. And the third one, it will shatter everything you thought you knew about God's presence among us. What if I told you that Good Friday wasn't a moment of defeat, but the greatest victory in human history? That within the darkest moment of apparent failure, the most powerful triumph was taking place? Stay with me through all 5 revelations. Each one builds upon the last, to show you why Good Friday wasn't what you think. This isn't just ancient history, it's a story you're part of, right now. The victory hidden in surrender. What if defeat was actually victory in disguise? What if the darkest moment in history was in truth the moment everything changed? Picture this scene. Golgotha, the place of the skull. The sun beats down upon a hill where 3 crosses stand against the sky. On the center cross hangs Jesus of Nazareth, blood trailing down his torn body, thorns pressed deep into his sacred brow. To every watching eye, this looks like the end, a devastating defeat. The man who healed the sick, raised the dead, and commanded storms to be still, now seemingly powerless to save himself. The crowd that had welcomed him with palm branches just days before now hurls insults. Roman soldiers cast lots for his clothing. His followers watch from a distance, hopes shattered. But beneath this visible scene of apparent failure, an invisible victory was unfolding, more magnificent than human eyes could perceive. When Jesus spoke those words, "It is finished," they were not whispered in defeat. They thundered through the spiritual realm like a king's triumphant declaration. In that moment, something extraordinary happened that changed the course of eternity. These words meant that every chain of sin binding humanity was being shattered. Every wall separating people from God was crumbling. Every curse hanging over creation was being broken. The unseen realm felt its foundations shake. Angels watched in awe. Demons trembled. In this divine paradox, the crucified king did what no earthly power could accomplish. He turned the weapon of death into the very tool of deliverance. The nails meant to hold him in place became the means by which salvation would flow to all humanity. Darkness at noon, creation's response. Why did the sun refuse to shine at midday? What made creation itself respond to the Creator's suffering? As this cosmic battle raged on, something unprecedented happened. At the height of day, when the sun should have been at its brightest, an eerie darkness fell across the land. This was no passing cloud, no brief shadow. For 3 hours, from noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness covered Jerusalem and beyond. Thick, heavy darkness in the middle of the day. The people around the cross shivered as daylight vanished. This was no natural eclipse for those last minutes, not hours. Creation itself seemed to be responding to its Creator's suffering. The sun, which had witnessed every sunrise since the dawn of time, now hid its face, unwilling to shine, while the Son of God suffered. This darkness carried a message for those with eyes to see. What was happening on that cross was more than a Roman execution. It was a divine transaction taking place on a cosmic scale. In that thick, unsettling gloom, Jesus was gathering into himself every shadow, every sorrow, every fear that had ever haunted the human heart. The darkness that settled over the land mirrored the darkness he willingly entered, so we would not have to remain in it forever. Beneath that darkened sky, time itself seemed to hold its breath. The earth stood in quiet awe as the Lamb of God bore the weight of separation from the Father, a mystery so profound that even the wisest minds cannot fully comprehend it. Yet, this darkness wasn't the end of the story. It carried within it the promise of a dawn yet to come. Just as night eventually surrenders to morning, this shadowy hour hinted at the light that would soon break forth in glorious brilliance. The torn veil, God's barrier removed. What if I told you that at the moment Jesus died, the most secure sacred boundary in Judaism was violently destroyed without human hands. As darkness still blanketed Jerusalem, something astonishing occurred within the heart of the temple, something no human eye witnessed, yet something that changed humanity's relationship with God forever. Hidden behind grand walls and sacred courts hung a massive veil, no ordinary curtain, but an imposing barrier, 60 feet high, as thick as a man's hand. This veil separated the holy place from the most holy place, the inner sanctuary where God's presence dwelled. For centuries, only the high priest could pass beyond this veil, and even then, only once each year, carrying sacrificial blood to atone for the people's sins. This veil stood as a physical reminder that sin had created a separation between humanity and God. Yet, at the precise moment Jesus breathed his last breath on the cross, something extraordinary happened. Without human hands touching it, this massive veil was violently torn from top to bottom. Not from bottom to top as if humans had reached up to God, but from top to bottom as if God himself had reached down to humanity. The sound of tearing fabric would have echoed through the stone corridors like thunder, startling priests and temple attendants. Dust rose as the heavy folds collapsed, exposing what had been hidden for generations. This was not coincidence. This was not accident. It was divine declaration. Through Jesus' sacrifice, the barrier between God and humanity was removed forever. The separation caused by sin that kept people distant from God's presence was now torn away. The path to the Father's heart now lay open, not through rituals and animal sacrifices, but through the living way made by the Son. No longer would God's presence be confined to a hidden room behind a barrier. No longer would people need to approach in fear, relying on another to intercede for them. The way was now open, wide, and welcoming, with a promise that could never be extinguished. The earthquake, creation couldn't stay silent. Did the earth truly respond to Christ's death? Why did the ground beneath Jerusalem shake violently at the moment Jesus died? As the veil settled in tatters and Jesus' final breath left his body, the earth itself could no longer remain still. Without warning, the ground began to shake and rumble. Deep sounds rising from within, as if creation itself was groaning in response to what had unfolded on the cross. Stones shifted and tumbled. The solid ground rolled like ocean waves. Buildings shuddered, and centuries of dust lifted into the air, as though ancient history itself was awakening to witness this moment. This was no ordinary earthquake. This tremor carried a message beyond words, a divine announcement that something far greater than the falling of stones was taking place. The earth, long burdened by the weight of sin and sorrow, felt the impact of the sacrifice made upon it. It was as if the very soil remembered the footsteps of its creator, who once walked in the cool of the garden. And now, feeling his life poured out in love, could not help but respond with trembling reverence. Rocks split apart, with loud cracks like thunder rolling across the hills. These stones, silent witnesses to centuries of human history, now declared without words that the power of death was being broken. This mighty quake was heaven speaking through the earth, declaring that Jesus' death wasn't the end, but the unfolding of a divine plan. It was as though God's invisible hand reached down, gripped the foundations of the earth, and gave it a mighty shake to awaken hearts to what had just been accomplished. Even the Roman soldiers, hardened by battle, trained to stand firm, found themselves trembling alongside the earth. What they witnessed on the cross, combined with the power of the quake, pierced through their armor of indifference. These men, accustomed to death and duty, were moved to exclaim, "Truly, this was the Son of God." The earthquake had spoken to them in a language no human could teach, a language of awe and holy fear that reached deep into their souls. The open graves, death's defeat begins. Why did graves open before the resurrection? What was the shocking message God was sending by breaking open tombs at the moment of Jesus' death? As the echoes of the earthquake faded into silence and dust settled upon the broken earth, something even more astonishing remained in its aftermath. Scattered across the hills and valleys, ancient tombs, cut deep into rock and sealed for generations, stood, strangely opened. These were no ordinary cracks from the tremor. The heavy stones that had long guarded the dead were no longer in place. They had been rolled away, some cast aside, as though an invisible force had reached into the shadowy chambers of death and torn the veil separating life from death. For anyone looking upon these opened graves, it must have seemed like a riddle too great to solve. Why would the earth not only quake, but also unlock the tombs? These open graves whispered of a coming victory over death, though the fullness of this mystery had not yet been revealed. There they stood, open, silent, expectant. The very air around them seemed to vibrate with quiet anticipation, like a breath held before the exhale of a miracle. These tombs, which had once spoken only of endings, of final chapters closed, had now been transformed into doorways, waiting for life to pass through once more. It was as if the earth itself, under the command of its creator, had flung open these ancient doors to make a declaration. Death would not have the final word. What had once been places of sorrow were now marked by holy disturbance, a preparation for something that would soon astonish both heaven and earth. The opened tombs were not empty signs of destruction, but living symbols of hope, about to awaken. Matthew tells us that after Jesus' resurrection, many bodies of saints who had fallen asleep were raised. They came out of the tombs and went into Jerusalem, appearing to many. Think about the message this sent. In the very moment of Jesus' apparent defeat, death itself was beginning to lose its grip. The graves were opening, because death's power was already being broken, even before the resurrection morning dawned. Why this day is truly Good Friday. With these 5 shocking mysteries unveiled, we can now understand why this day, this very day, once soaked in sorrow, is not a day of defeat, but of deepest triumph. Good Friday is wrapped in divine paradox, where sorrow and joy, death and life, judgment and mercy, all meet in a way that defies simple explanation. The cross, once a cruel instrument of torment, has become the very banner of our hope, raised high, not as a reminder of despair, but as a signal fire of divine victory. We celebrate Good Friday not because we take joy in Christ's suffering, but because we see through the pain to the purpose hidden within it. Each drop of blood that traced its way down the wood of the cross was not lost to the ground unnoticed. It spoke silently of love deeper than oceans, broader than the heavens. It is this mysterious exchange, life given in death, freedom purchased through suffering, that fills Good Friday with its profound meaning. We are not mere spectators of a past event. We are partakers in its living power, embraced by the same love that held Jesus to the cross. The celebration isn't in the cruelty of the cross, but in the beauty of the love that transformed it. With every Good Friday, we step once more into the holy hush of that day, feeling the tremors of earth beneath our feet, sensing the weight of the darkened sky, yet knowing in the depths of our souls that this was not the end. The cries from the cross were not the closing of a chapter, but the opening lines of a new and living story, one that continues to unfold in the lives of all who believe. This story is not over, and you are part of it. Has one of these moments opened your eyes in a new way? Tell me which one stirred your heart and why. Which of these 5 mysteries reveals something you never saw before about Good Friday? If this message touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear the true meaning behind Good Friday. Subscribe to join us as we continue exploring how these ancient mysteries still change our lives today.